This program is brought to you through a partnership between the Madison Public Library and the Madison Historical Society. Before we can look at Madison, we must review a little history. Many colonies claimed lands to the west, although few had been there. Connecticut was one of these colonies. They claimed a strip of land from the Pennsylvania border to the Mississippi River. After the Revolutionary War, states joined to return lands to the United States because of the Northwest Ordinance. Connecticut wanted to keep their claim, already overcrowded, so they were allowed to reserve a strip of land 120 miles long, 71 miles wide, from the Pennsylvania border to the Cuyahoga River. This was approximately 3.3 million acres. Eventually, this area formed 10 full counties and parts of 4 others. In 1795, a group of 35 investors purchased the 3.3 million acres and formed the Connecticut Land Company. In 1796, they sent Moses Cleveland to begin surveying, directing him to lay out townships in 5 square miles. Township number 11 went from the Grand River to Middle Ridge Road. Township number 12 went from our now Middle Ridge Road to Lake Erie, but it was not quite the 5 square miles, so it was called a gore. Eventually, they will join to form the largest township in Ohio, almost 50 square miles. In 1796, the Connecticut Land Company began selling land to speculators, and in 1797, land in Madison began being sold. This is a picture of the Arcola estuary. There are only 7 all along the Great Lakes, and we have 1. It was here in March 1798, 3 families landed, the Harpers, McFarlands, and Gregorys. They could not settle here because it was too swampy, so they moved inland to the area what we now call Route 84 and County Line Road. Alexander Harper was the leader of this group. He and his wife were walking around the area where they decided to settle, and the story goes he chose a spot he wished to be buried in. He died 4 months later. His tombstone says, "Here lies an upright man." People thought he was buried that way. His son Robert built Shandy Hall, and his son was the first child born in this area in 1803. This is a picture of the Connecticut Land Company building in Unionville, and it is still there, just looking a little bit different today. Let's look at the development of Township number 12. Keep in mind, Township number 11 was also developing at the same time. The town of Ellensburg was settled between the Arcola Creek and what is now Redbird Road. In 1803, a pier and lighthouse were constructed at the foot of what is now Dock Road. A second pier was added later. In 1811, John Cunningham and his sons Artemus, Cyrus, and Amos bought 3,000 acres. Other settlers in this area were the Hubbards and Bennetts. This area had an abundance of timber and the convenient harbor. And because of that, 2 industries developed in this area. In 1812, surveyors who were cutting a road through what we now call North Ridge Road discovered bog ore. At the same time, because of the trees and the harbor, a shipbuilding industry emerged. In 1825, the first furnace was built to turn bog ore into pig iron. The harbor made it convenient to bring in limestone for this from Kelly's Island. By 1835, this area was the largest industrial site in Ohio. The first steamship built west of Buffalo was completed in 1825. By 1825, this area employed 2,000 men, with a development of 200 homes, a boarding house, a hotel, store, post office, school, sawmills. Other industries flourished, including Wilkerson Stove, Arcola Iron Works, and the King Foundry. This is an example of what the bog ore looked like. This is an example of what the pig iron looked like once it was done with the furnace. This is a drawing of some of the farm implements that were produced at the Iron King Foundry from that pig iron. This is a tea kettle the Historical Society owns that was produced at the Iron King Foundry. And this is a cultivator that the Iron King Foundry produced. This is a byproduct of the pig iron. It's called blue slag, and it was used to pave our roads and our streets. By 1848, bog and timber were depleted. A sandbar closed off the mouth of Arcola Creek, which made the shipbuilding difficult. By 1863, the Bailey brothers built the last of the 22 ships they constructed here. Other communities established here included Arcadia, North Madison, and Redbird, and the name Redbird can still be seen on maps. Now, let's take a look at the development of Township number 11. I'm sorry, this is the only remaining structure from this Ellensburg area. This is called the Arcola House, and it sits at the corner of Dock Road and Route 20. It was a boarding house, a general store, and a post office. In 1802, a man by the name of Chapin built his home east of the village. He chose that area because there were not too many trees. He was not terribly ambitious. By 1809, there were 3 families here, so they called this area Chapintown. He moved away. So the 9 families that lived in this area decided to change the name to Centerville, and they located their settlement at the corner of Middle Ridge and 528. Later, the location of the village was moved up to Route 84, South Ridge Road, due to the traffic that was coming from the settlers that were coming going out west. In 1811, 15 families, the Harpers, Thompson, Turney, Wood, Mixer, all met at the home of Phineas Mixer and voted to recognize Madison as a separate township from Geauga County. They named this township Madison, probably because James Madison was president at the time. In 1812, they built the first schoolhouse, called the Block School. In 1815, they bought 3.5 acres for public ground that we call the Village Park. In 1813, Joseph Talcott and Abel Kimball were out chopping wood and heard cannon fire from the Battle of Lake Erie. Mr. Miller wanted to build a home without providing liquor, so no one would help him. A settler by the name of Mrs. Hall had a bonnet to sell, and another settler was interested in it. She tried on the bonnet. Her baby began to cry and wouldn't stop crying until she removed the bonnet. Mrs. Hall did not make a sale that day. Joseph Kellogg walked into town to become a justice of the peace. He married Orphi Hitchcock, standing in a new covered buggy, the first of its kind in this area. In 1815, we had our first general store. Butter was 15 cents. Sugar was 50 cents. Pound of tea was $1.75. 3 bushels of apples were $6, and 8 yards of gingham was $4. We had grist mills, carding mills, whiskey distilleries, and whiskey was considered legal tender. Cheese factories, cooperages. At one time, Madison was the onion capital of Ohio. We produced and shipped more onions than any place else. Unfortunately, a blight killed the onion fields. We had grocery stores, drug stores, clothing stores, harness shops, carriage shops, shoe stores, hat shops, blacksmiths, furniture stores, piano and organ stores, and funeral parlors. Later, we added the Madison Woolen Factory, the Willowcraft Basket Factory, Madison Wheel Shop, and the Edwards Canning Company. And it was said that when they were canning their tomatoes, you could smell it over the whole township. In 1934, Madison had a winery. In 1992, we had 4 wineries. In 2020, 15. We added Hubble Corporation, Perfection Corporation, U.S. Cocomat, and Lico. This is a drawing of what Madison might have looked like in 1888. This is a picture of Main Street, and this picture was taken somewhere after 1881, but I think before the invention of the automobile. This is Main Street today. The district is 800 feet long and encompasses about 10 acres. The village was incorporated in 1867, and the first mayor was elected in March of 1868, and his name was J.B. Hayden. I like this picture, and I'm including it because this was a telephone operator at the time in the early 1900s, but she also had another job. When a call came in that there was a fire, she had to open that window that was behind her, reach out and pull the rope to the bell that clanged for the fire department. This building on West Main Street was built in 1841 and was used as a general store. It had many other kinds of businesses in it, including the Madison Historical Society at one point. And in 1923, it became the depot for the Cleveland, Painesville, Ashtabula Interurban. This building on West Main Street was built in 1830 by Addison Kimball for David Page, who was a judge for the Court of Common Pleas. It eventually became the Page Hotel. After falling into disrepair, it was fixed up by Dr. Klingbeil, and when he became mayor, he wanted a hotel in Madison, which was finally realized in 2019. This building, which became a bank, was built by Robertus Childs at a cost in 1875 of $4,300. It was used as a bank for 94 years, and the vault still remains. This is a drawing of, it was a Wheeler House, the Madison House, the Temperance Hotel, the Roadside Inn, and eventually the Park Hotel. It was built in 1850. It had rooms for 40 guests, a dining room, large porch on 2 sides, a spring dance ballroom floor, but it was destroyed by fire in 1927. The proprietors, the Hellregals, decided not to rebuild here and instead rebuilt in Painesville. Other fires in Madison included one in 1903 that destroyed some buildings. One in 1909 was a major fire in the business district, and we had another fire in 1960. This is the drawing of the original gazebo. It was built in 1886 and stood until 1954. This is a picture of the gazebo in our village park today. The Civil War Monument was unveiled on July 4th, 1897. It was dedicated to the 25 residents who died in the Civil War. It was built at a cost of $1,000. Plaques honoring the veterans were lost at one time, and when they were found, they were permanently placed around the base of the monument. The Central Congregational Church was first built in 1831. It was moved to the east. Another structure was built while they built this current church between 1887 and 1892. The Central Congregational Church gave this church building to the township. It was moved to the east and turned to face north. It was made into the town hall, so the steeple was removed. Even though it's in the village, it was owned by the township. It was remodeled in 1924, added the jail cell and columns. The bases of the columns were the first restoration project completed by the Madison Historical Society. The Park Methodist Church was dedicated on December 25th, 1865. In 1925, the church raised the building to add a basement, and in 1961, the steeple was replaced. This building was built in 1827 as a tannery for Elijah Wood. Its appearance has remained basically unchanged. In another little story, in the movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles with Steve Martin and John Candy, there's a 5-second clip of them driving through Madison Village, and you can just see this building in the background. This 5-second clip involved the police to close off the road, the fire department, who had to wet down the road because it was supposed to be raining, and spraying water on the car as it drove by. This building opened in 1919. It was financed by a $10,000 grant from the Andrew Carnegie Foundation. $5,400 was raised from taxes and the rest from donations. It served as the Madison Public Library until 1974. We need to talk about Madison's famous son. His name was Frederick Opper. He grew up in Madison, and he went off to New York City to become a cartoonist for the Hearst Publishing Company for 32 years, and his cartoon was called The Happy Hooligan. Our first cemetery, dedicated in 1817, was at the corner of West Main and Eagle. You may notice that there is a marker still there, but there's no body buried underneath it. It was moved to its present site in 1854. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed our presentation on the history of Madison.